Hello, welcome to AI in Action. My name is Maurie, and I'm here with my husband Jim, and we are going to talk about artificial intelligence. We are one day late on our podcast, and we actually did not do a podcast last week. We were in Galveston at the Elementary Technology Conference that's put on by the TCEA, and it was a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun, but go walk on the beach, come do a podcast.
Yeah, I tell you, and you did a good job with the hotel room too. So sitting out on our balcony,
Yes.
looking out over the ocean, we stayed at the San Luis Resort, which is right down the street from the conference. It's our first time we've ever stayed there, and I gotta say it was nice. We were on the 14th floor. We could have done the podcast, so we had a good view out there. We could have done it.
I think it would have been a really noisy, and I think we would have had a seagull problem because
There
that
was a
is
lot
one
of
thing
seagulls.
when you're out on the balcony, you've got the cranes and the seagulls, and they're everywhere.
The
But
seagulls are they're like squirrels on the college campuses. They see food, they go for food. I saw a
yes,
lady down by the pool, dived right at her. Anyway, it was a good conference. Mainly we like going to that one. We've been going for many years, but we like it because elementary teachers are just excited.
they have a lot of energy,
They
a
do.
lot of energy.
They do. And it's
And I
not
mean,
just the brand new ones either.
no, okay, so I posted on LinkedIn a picture. There was a lady that I always love it when people ask to get a picture taken with me, but it was just kind of cool. So she came up to me after one of the presentations we'd given, and she was like, can I take a picture? And I was like, absolutely. She had been in the classroom for 45 years.
Oh, yeah. She didn't look like she'd been in the classroom for
45 years. And she had retired after 45 years, and she still substitute teaches almost on a daily basis.
And she goes to conferences
and
after
loves it.
still wants to learn new things after 45 years.
Absolutely
That's
loves it.
incredible. That's
Yeah,
incredible.
I was like, oh my goodness, kudos to you. But anyway, a
All
lot
right.
of stuff is going on with artificial intelligence. Of course, we will try our best not to get off task, off focus, because we have a lot of stuff
Yeah.
going on with AI and also a lot of stuff going on politically. And so we're going to kind of stay away from some of the political stuff.
No, we're going to stay away from the political stuff completely this week.
Okay, well, you might hear
rule.
squeaking ball in the background.
We're going to skip the section on the Texas laws this week, probably.
Okay, sounds good. If you do hear a squeaking ball in the background, Jim, Sadie, I found 2 of her balls were hidden under the couch, and so we have a bunch of toys up here now. So, all right, let's get into this. So, MIT released a study, right? And a lot of people have been talking about it. Talk of the town. Lots of posts on LinkedIn about it. A lot of people giving their 2 cents worth, about it. And so, let's talk about it for a second.
Well, we're almost late talking about it because in AI world, it was released like a week or 2 ago, and we haven't talked about it already. So, but the thing that when I look at I took some notes on it because I wanted to make sure that we covered the high points. But they're basically saying that if you use ChatGPT specifically or large language models in general to write things and try to learn with them, that you don't, and that you get dumber.
It's cognitive offloading, and so and therefore you're not learning as much because you're offloading the cognitive process. So, okay, well, some of the things that I kind of disagree with. First of all, I don't think there were that many people that were part of the study group.
I don't think so. If my notes are correct, it was only 54, and maybe that's statistically significant. I'm not a statistician. Just seems like a low number for me. But they didn't claim they had a large number in their defense. They weren't trying to say something that they weren't. But anyway, continue.
And so they used essay sessions, and basically they had them, okay, we're going to have you write a paper with a large language model, right? And then they're going to have you write a paper without any use of the large language model. And while they were doing this, they supposedly hooked them up to EEGs to track the brain waves. And they found that if you wrote with had the large language model write it with you, of course, you weren't using as much of your brain as if you wrote it yourself. Okay. I mean, I understand that is a finding, but my question that I automatically have to put out there is, first of all, I don't think you can do a blanket statement that if you use AI, you're going to get brain rot which is basically what a lot of the
It was a
headlines
lot of
were.
headlines but basically what they were saying, they even did a follow-up, as I understand it. And basically, of course, if you do a follow-up and you know that somebody didn't learn it in the beginning and then you follow up later, obviously they're going to know less than the people who did learn it. So the
Right.
fact that they had even weaker results 3 or 4 months later is like, it's not really a surprise. But you mentioned the headlines, and we saw them all everywhere. Headlines, headlines, headlines.
My point, and something that I find very lacking with the study, is it was only concerning writing.
Well, hold on. Before you skip over that in the notes, I think you should mention a couple of the headlines, because this is the kind of stuff we see so much, which is going to lead us to the next part of our conversation. This
Okay.
is the stuff we see so much, which is
Okay.
these
So headline number one.
headlines,
Number one. Okay. Clickbait. Clickbait's what this is.
all written by AI.
Excessive AI use may lead to cognitive decline.
That's for the. It's supposed to sound educated. The next one is more for the common folk. Is Chat GPT making us dumber?
Is it making us dumber? Is Chat GPT making us dumber? Okay,
Yeah.
so those headlines are meant to get you to click on them. And it's one of the things, like whenever I see the first headline, excessive AI use may lead to cognitive decline, I'm like, so does alcohol use and age
Smoking weed.
and smoking weed? I mean, there's so many things that lead to cognitive decline, right?
What I thought was interesting was, if you look at the engagement piece, which you kind of hinted at a second ago,
Mm-hmm,
I'm going to go up to you. You're an elementary teacher. And I'm
mm-hmm.
going to go up to you and I'm going to say, low engagement, they didn't learn as much. What are you going to say?
I really appreciate that information, and I'm going to be very sarcastic when I say it because I've known it for a very long time.
You're going to
It's
say,
going to be
duh.
going to be like, oh goodness, what was the comedian that basically said, "Here's your sign"?
Yeah. So
You're not telling me anything I don't already know.
we're well aware that any tool you have that doesn't help with engagement, I mean, teachers are fighting this every day. They're trying to they're fighting against social media. They're fighting against, just YouTube videos. They're fighting against games. I mean, they have a hard time keeping the kids engaged. We're raising a society of 80 kids because
Yes,
we have so much going on. I mean, how do you stay engaged? But again, when you tell an elementary teacher or any teacher, low engagement, we did this study, and low engagement meant the kids didn't
makes you
learn.
not learn.
And you're
They
like,
don't learn if
wow,
they're not
wow,
engaged.
that's awesome.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
moving along with it, you mentioned several times you had issues with the study. My
I
issue is the fact that I have been undiagnosed, but still had learning disability my entire life. Even though I have an engineering degree, I still struggled with learning
don't
because,
call it a disability.
do we not call it disability
It's
anymore?
not a disability.
Well,
It's a
when you have a hard,
disorder.
when you can't focus, and the learning modality that is preferred in education is sit in a chair, people write things on the board for a long period of time, take notes, memorize material, maybe do some projects, maybe not, regurgitate material on a test. That is the definition of torture to someone who has attention deficit disorder.
I'd like to
I have a hard
say,
time focusing.
from my counseling perspective, I have to say, you did not fail in a system. The system failed you.
I agree. And it's one of those things where the style needed to be changed. Anyway,
Yes.
I don't want to get too deep into my own issues. I didn't even know I had a learning disorder until you were kind enough to buy a book for me that I didn't realize when I started reading. I was like, this book could have been written about
Okay,
by
so
me.
I got to throw that out there. It's the Holderness family. They're famous YouTubers, the Holderness family. The book is called ADHD is Awesome. Okay, and because the guy is classic ADHD. Watch one of his videos, you'll immediately know that he is. And it's a really good book. But what have you done, Jim? How far into the book are you?
I got distracted and I've read half the book.
You've read half and then you're distracted and you haven't finished it. So I think you need to have a
I
goal over our
think
vacation. Maybe you need to finish the book.
maybe I do. But the other stuff that bothered me about this whole thing is that it applied to a very specific learning style, a very specific subject. And I don't think that was deceptive by the people who did the study. I think the people who are trying to get the splashy headlines that are using AI to generate the words that catch people's attention were trying to use it to get attention. And I think it does a disservice to the researchers, though maybe that's what they were doing. Maybe they were trying to get something published for Paris. Maybe they were trying to get something published, and therefore they did it to get as much headlines as they could. I don't really know. I just know that it seemed very limited in number of people, in the scope, in the learning modalities. And I think it highlights, like you said a second ago, it highlights the fact that though some teachers do try, we still have a lot of work to do to try to deal with all the different ways that people learn. I mean,
yes,
it has to evolve. And that's why you and I talk about AI so much.
and that's because we both really believe that artificial intelligence, if used correctly, can help address some of those different learning modalities. We
Does with
have
me.
Notebook LM is a very good example, and you have talked about it several times. You can take information that you know is correct information. You can put it in any format. You can put it into Notebook LM, and then you, who is more of an auditory learner, can listen to a podcast about that information and even interrupt and ask questions of an AI concerning the information that you gave it, not information that was made up, but information that you actually gave it.
It does a pretty good job. I mean, I'm not saying it's perfect, but it lets me really, really dig into the subject. And I dig into subjects. I dig deep, but I don't dig straight. It's like me digging a ditch across the yard. It's going to kind of be a little curvy going across there. So I'm going to get kind of distracted. I even thought about writing a book about, 15 minutes. You can do anything for 15 minutes kind of thing, because that was before I realized that most people actually can focus for longer than 15 minutes.
Right.
I have a hard time.
Right.
Anyway,
right.
I want to move on because we have another piece that we wanted to talk about, and I thought it was interesting. And it was one of those musings that I do with the fact that I have AI.
Yes.
Allows me to kind of go off in the weeds and think about stuff.
You have a thought, and then thank God you have AirPods now, because as soon as you have a thought, you get your app on your phone, you open it up, and you start having a voice conversation with an AI, and you just chase that rabbit down that hole, and now I don't necessarily have to listen to the conversation at 4:00 in the morning. That's happening in our bathroom off of our master bedroom. Jim's in there talking to a female.
Do try to sneak out now, though, and get into another room, or like go to my workshop or something.
Yeah,
I'm getting a little bit,
but it does allow you to literally chase these ideas. Yes. And that's one of the things about the MIT study that wasn't mentioned, is that you can wake up at 4:00 in the morning with a question, and AI can be your tutor right there, right then.
Yeah, and I know. And there's going to be a lot of discussions about, well, that means you're not learning in depth. I don't agree. I learn in great depth. I just don't learn linearly.
Yes, correct. So let's talk for just a second about your musing.
Because it's summertime.
You chased this one down. So tell me about it.
I did. It's summertime. It's Texas. If you're from Texas and it's the summertime, you think about water. If you have any survival instincts at all, you think about water, because water gets low. If you're going to go hiking out in Big Bend, you better have water with you. But even living here where we live, the river starts getting low. People get worried. So when you start thinking about that, you start thinking about
our
drinking water. Is the water clean? Because as the rivers get lower, they don't run as much.
Bacteria growth.
Solution to pollution is dilution. And if you don't have enough water to dilute it, then the pollution gets worse.
Right.
And so I started doing some research. I was curious because I read once that, you see all these boats on the lake, and they leak gas, they're gasoline motors. You see these boats. And I was curious once, how much water can a gallon of gas make undrinkable?
Ooh.
Well, the answer is about an Olympic-sized swimming pool, which is 660,000 gallons of water. So almost a little over 2/3 of a million gallons of water with a gallon of gas can make it undrinkable, depending on the concentration. Now, if you got a river flowing, obviously it'll continue to bring in fresh source water, but I'm talking about something that doesn't. So what does that have to do with AI? Well, because recently I read about what they're calling info poisoning.
Information poisoning.
Yes. And I got you some notes there because I thought you'd find it interesting about what that was.
Yeah, 35% machine written is what they're saying now.
That's the whole web. That's the information. That source for that is a website I didn't know about. It's called Common Crawl. Okay. And it's an open source repository of web crawl data. and it can be used by anyone. They're saying synthetic text or AI written 35% of everything written now. And I think the number's higher. I think it's low. I think it's just for common
So
crawl. I think there's a whole lot more than that.
the question that I have is, do you think that it's AI written or do you think that it's AI augmented?
They're saying synthetic.
Okay.
They're saying it's AI written. It's not AI. It's not what I do. If I take something and put it in there and just I write it myself because I like to write, and then I put it in there and get it cleaned up, or like
Right.
you do with editing.
Ask your opinion. Yeah.
It
It's like,
is
what's your opinion on this? Yeah.
generated by AI. It's the thing kids are doing and get in trouble for with their papers they turn in.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the studies, besides the information you just mentioned, one of the studies from Oxford, Cambridge talked about of recursion. Now I know a lot about recursion because I have a degree in computer engineering, but they're saying basically that they're talking about model collapse, meaning that the idea of a model is that it can continue to learn on unique human generated data because it makes more use for the human. Now there's an argument that synthetic data is just as good, but the recursion aspect of it is it's like, it's like mad cow disease. You're not
Mm-hmm.
supposed to feed cows themselves. And when you
Right.
feed that stuff back into itself, it tends to be bad. And apparently it's bad for models. This curse of recursion saying that at 20%, I think, synthetic, you can get
Yeah.
model collapse.
That's not
So
good.
that's not
That's
good if you've
horrible.
got 35% of the data being generated by AI.
Yeah.
That's synthetic data. So
Okay. So
now,
I had something happen today that I wanted to ask your opinion out that it has to do with data being like done by the AI or synthetic. Okay. I was going back and forth with the AI today and I had a typo. And one of the things on the question, I had meant to say sidekick, like Superman sidekick, superhero sidekick kind of thing. And I said side lick.
ooh,
Okay. All right. So the AI comes back and says, "Oh my God, I love that word, side lick. That's amazing. What a great word." And I was like, "Oh, no. That was a typo. That was a typo. I didn't mean, I actually meant this." But it's the first time it had ever came back to me or at me when I had done a typo and thought it was an actual word. So my question is, did I just poison the AI just a little bit because I gave it a word
well,
that does not exist?
I can tell you based on the fact that what it said when you asked it about you to describe you not recently, I think you just gave it a whole new set of source material to describe you that's probably not very complimentary. But
Yeah,
anyway, I guess theoretically you could have, but if you're making up the word, does that really poison it though?
I
Because
don't know.
I mean,
It
the
was weird.
whole point of the AI is for it to be useful to humans. The
Mm-hmm.
humans are the ones that are supposed to determine whether or not that experience is unique or is accurate or whatever. We're not supposed to serve them; they're supposed to serve us.
Right.
So
So let's talk about this for just a second, though, because if it's already at that percentage, like they're saying that the info, the
35%
collapse,
thing and 20%,
35%,
yes.
20% synthetic, then you're looking at model collapse. If you take that and you go into the future and you extrapolate, when is this going to be like a disaster?
Well, I'm
Like,
already here. I'm already hearing that according to the stats that I had, put in our notes here, that AI text doubled every 12 months since 2023. So it's growing at exponential rate. They're saying it could pass 50% of all data generated by 2026. And I've read recently that they're saying that data that was done before November 30th, 2022
people
is
don't use
actually
it.
no, it's more valuable
Yeah. No, that's what I
because
meant.
AI
That
didn't, they
they're
actually
not
want that
right. It's
because
at a premium. It's at
it's
a
better for
premium.
AI training. That's correct. So, back to my gasoline thing, which is where this all, I know it's a weird connection that I made in my head, but it was about pollution.
Yeah.
The difference is according to some of the studies that I read and my own analogies, but gasoline, can 1 gallon, 1 million gallons. But in some ways, this, from an information perspective, it's worse because gasoline, when you pour a gallon in, it's just a gallon. This data keeps reproducing itself
Right.
at this high rate and it's accelerating. A single, like your word, spit lick or whatever it was, side lick or whatever your word was,
Side lick.
your word could be reproduced 10 million times.
Right.
Suddenly it's become a word just because, they used
All
it for
these
training
AIs are
to,
telling all the other AIs, "Hey guys, guess what? This is a new word."
Well, and it kind of goes to the whole before 2022 thing. Rare knowledge, human generated knowledge is becoming something that people desire. It's like a valuable thing now.
Right.
So the question I would ask you is, why do teachers care?
Well, that's definitely tied this back into education. I would think
That's
that
what I want to do.
I would think that teachers would care because, like, in the future, what type of information is going to be real and is not going to be real. Like, if you have a history class that you're trying to teach and an AI has been trained differently, or an AI has false information, then you're going to lose little pieces of history that are factual because that information is not going to be regurgitated over and over again, even though it might be
It's
important
going to get lost
information.
in the noise too. I mean, you
Yeah,
can generate so much fake noise that the real stuff is just lost.
right.
It was a quote that I put in here that I thought you'd like. Students might get fluent fluff instead of hard facts. I like that. Fluent
That is,
fluff.
yeah,
So, I mean, again, you're training a lot of this AI on social media, and social
that's
media,
definitely fluff right there.
wow, is it ever? So, I guess the question, this part I didn't know. Again, when I was doing my research on this, that some of the companies I had heard they were trying to watermark stuff as AI. I just didn't think it was practical to do that. But
Hmm.
they're saying OpenAI and Google actually are already putting hidden watermarks in to try to see. I don't know if this is true or not, but it's kind of interesting how they would do that. But some way of telling that it was AI generated. Now, I thought they claimed they couldn't do that. So if that's actually true, that's interesting. But I think they see it coming. I mean, I said from almost the day I told you about AI, I told you that, I mean, it's why you're on that, human, whatever that thing you're on. I mean, at some
Yeah,
point you start going, what is human generated? And do I care? I mean, I think you're going to start dividing it up. You can't say if it's human generated, it's better because humans can generate garbage just like anybody else can.
yes, they can.
And AI generated is garbage because some AI is not garbage. So there's going to be these kind of gray areas where you say, for this particular task, what AI generates is good enough. But at some point, there's got to be some value in the human experience that makes it better if it's human generated, or
Right,
at least better
right.
for the app. I think it's application specific, I think is what I'm trying to talk about.
Yeah,
But
and I also talked about how there really needed to be something that was like, okay, this is, instead of watermarking it as AI generated, that there's going to be value in certifying it as human.
certified human, that's what I told you from.
And as soon as you told me that, I was like, "Oh, let's go get that domain name." And
Yeah,
it was
somebody beat
already
us to it.
taken.
Somebody beat us to it.
There was
Yeah.
no iteration of her certified human anywhere out there. So I think other people are having the same thoughts that we were having, because eventually, I mean, artistic pieces are going to become more valuable if it's certified human. I almost want to step back to like blockchain. Okay, so I was raised in the country and we had cows. And when I was a little girl and I was born, my dad gave me a bull. Okay. And then every single cow, specifically a calf that the bull produced, I got to keep. But
Oh, you are a redneck.
every bull that the bull produced, whenever the bull was bred, the cow was bred. You know what I'm saying?
I
If
know.
the cow had a bull, the bull got auctioned off. But if the cow had a calf, then we got to keep the female.
So females stayed, males went out.
Right. But it was all in a big ledger book. And we literally tracked that cow from birth all the way. And it's like a blockchain situation. I know that
That's
we
what they
do that
use blockchain
already.
for now. Yeah,
Well,
I've heard they use blockchain for that.
and we use it for our butchering facilities, we use it for our vegetables, our gardens, all this stuff.
Well, that's how they trace diseases
Eventually,
back.
I think that there's going to be some serious blockchain going on when it comes to certifying something as human from conception. If it's human from conception, then it's going to be like blockchain, so it can be certified.
And you know what? There's going to be a huge amount of money and fights over that. It's sort of like the things that are certified as organic, because it
Mm-hmm.
was originally created to help small ranchers and farmers. So they would say, you grew this, you didn't use pesticides, so you charge a premium for it. Well, it
Right.
became such a big business that the businesses got in on it, and they started. That's why the all natural thing came from, because they didn't want to certify it as organic because it's too expensive to grow that way. but they wanted to sound like it was organic, so they created natural. Well, by now they've diluted the whole process of organic so much, I'm not sure it even means anything anymore.
Oh, let's go look for the website now. Instead of certified human, let's go look for natural human.
All natural human?
All natural human. I'm going to go look for the domain name now.
You
All natural human. So we have about 5 minutes left.
There's a couple of things that I thought were interesting. Some other stuff.
Okay.
NVIDIA did a Nematron, Carl. That's their new thing. I think that's their new world model building thing, but I'm not sure. But they kept 30% of the synthetic data on purpose, which what was interesting about that was otherwise they couldn't get enough data. So data is going, we've talked about this before, it's going behind more and more paywalls.
Yes.
The New York Times knows they've got a valuable data set. Hell, the Lano News has got a data set going back 100 years.
Yes.
Maybe we could go down there and see if they'll let us digitize all that. We could.
A lot of it is, but that's how, let's face it, rural America might become a hub for
all natural data.
Real information.
That's right. I think there's a sci-fi movie about that. Oh, wait a minute. That's one of those apocalyptic ones where you have to go to rural America because never mind. Anyway, I did think that was interesting, though, that the data squeeze, and it's going to get tighter. I mean, the amount of money people are spending on data now, that's why Meta just spent $14 billion buying Scale, because Scale labels data.
Right.
And they don't want their competitors to get access to the biggest labeling company on the planet. So they $14 billion to keep them from doing it. So the data squeeze is on. So basically, the whole point of all of this conversation is how do you get clean data? I mean, how do you keep the data from being polluted? What is the definition of polluted? I think that that's a conversation that's going to get more and more viability. I mean, you're already seeing it, there's so much garbage on the internet now. When you look at it, I can tell you generally in about 3 seconds if it was AI generated, and most of these people generate it, they don't care.
Okay, so I have to say something about that. I have been using artificial intelligence since you woke me up at 4 o'clock in the morning and introduced me to it in November or probably the month before 2022. You probably woke me up in like October of 2022.
Probably.
But anyway, when you introduced me to AI, immediately started using it. And one of the things I did use it for at first was a lot of idea generation, outline generation. Help me with this paragraph. Help me write this better. I still do it. I sat down. I'm so excited. My book is almost done. It's not just my book. I collected tons of stories.
It's not AI written.
Okay, so it's all these stories that all these teachers have given me, the things that have actually happened to them in their classrooms or as an educator or an administrator or a bus driver or whatever. And so I've compiled all these stories. I would sit there and I'm starting to work on, okay, here's the description of the book. Here's my bio. Here's this, here's that. And when I sit down and I write it now, I start writing and sounding like an AI.
I know, I catch you doing that occasionally, but
I'm the one writing it. Well, but I'm the one writing it, and then I'll sit there and say...
So what you're saying is AI is starting to sound like you?
Yeah, and you know what?
That's because it's getting more training data.
Here we go. I was reading a romance novel the other day because I love trash novels. All right. I was reading a romance novel.
That's good data sources.
I'm sorry. I call them trash novels because you can finish them really fast. Okay. It doesn't take up much of my time to read a trash novel. I was reading this trash novel the other day and I saw the word delve. And I was like, shit, this thing's written by an AI.
Language.
Sorry. Crud. This thing's written by an AI. And so I looked at the publication date of the book. It was published in 2016.
So it's not written by AI.
So it was not written by AI.
You mean it was legal to use the word delve?
It was not written by... So then I was like, you know what? AI's trained on things like this book. Trash novels. Things that were out there on the internet. Fan fiction and everything else. And these people, who are great writers, by the way, very descriptive, use words like delve. Come on. There are some really good writers out there.
There are some really good writers. I'm just not sure they're writing the books you're talking about, but maybe.
But still, I mean...
I have no issue. You love those books. It is relaxing for you. I love teasing you occasionally about it, but I would buy them for you myself if I had to, just to get you to read them, because
Thank
it is your
goodness
way
we
of
have
unwinding.
Kindle Unlimited. Thank you.
We have Kindle Unlimited. That is correct.
So we're out of time. Let's wrap this up.
Let's wrap this up. You're going to be on a panel. We're going to be at ISTE. I'm going to be walking around the floor looking for interesting things. You're going to be on a panel with Intel talking about education.
Yes.
And I think you've got a women's thing you're going to one night. So
with Lenovo. Yeah, with Lenovo. Yeah, we'll be busy. We're going to go down and we're going to stay in San Antonio for a couple of nights. And I have a lot of people reaching out on LinkedIn. Hey, are you going to be at ISTE? So I'm going to get to see some people that, I only have conversations with through LinkedIn. I haven't actually met them in person, and they're going to be in San Antonio. So we're going to get to actually, shake some hands and get to know some more people. Doing the Austin AI Alliance on Wednesday of this next week. Things are looking really good for that.
Tomorrow, right?
Tomorrow. Actually, it is tomorrow evening.
Yes.
Austin AI Alliance is putting together a school, like 3 days of educational content the first week of August that we'll be talking about as we get closer to the first week of August. So yeah, we have some stuff going on, but my book is set. My publication date, I'm looking at July the 4th. So, and we'll talk about more about that.
The symbolism is Maurie's finally going to be independent. It's her Independence Day from her office.
Well, it's Independence Day for teachers. It's one of those things that it's time for teachers to be heard as to what it's actually like in the trenches.
Can we sell your book as unique content to these AI people? Because the stories weren't written by AI; they were written by teachers. So, and we know that.
Well, a lot of the stories were written by me based on the stories that the teachers sent me.
They were still
because
written,
like the teacher would tell me the story verbally.
That's true. I mean, you did write it yourself because most of it was verbal. But I did see you writing all this stuff down. We had a booth at TCA, and you were collecting stories, and plus we work at a district every day, so a whole bunch of those stories come from teachers that you either work with now or have in the past.
And come with me. Come from me.
Yeah, well, you were in the kindergarten and the 4th grade and the 5th grade and the
6th, 7th,
and 8th. And so you've got plenty of your own stories.
And a bus driver.
Some of those. The bus driver. That was a good one. And you were a counselor. And anyway, you've got some good stories.
Yeah. So, all right, we are gone for this week. I hope that you guys have a marvelous rest of the week.